So, I just got done watching The Batman, and it was pretty good. It's certainly not perfect by any means, but it's easily the Caped Crusader's best cinematic installment since The Dark Knight. The film was directed by Matt Reeves and stars Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, Paul Dano as the Riddler, Colin Farrell as the Penguin, and Robert Pattinson as Emo Batman. R.I.P. Fat Fleck and his chonky batsuit. Never forget. One of the strongest aspects of the Batman is its visual presentation. Cinematographer Greig Fraser employs an intense mixture of black and red in many scenes, which lends an appropriately melodramatic feel to the film's neo-noir vision of Gotham. Every shot is steeped in shadows and darkness, and it creates this really strong sense of visual contrast with the film's usage of light. This is the best looking version of Gotham City I've ever seen on the silver screen. And by that, I mean it's the worst looking version of Gotham I've ever seen. Just an absolute miserable shithole of a city. Its rain-slicked landscape blighted with oppressive urban decay and architectural rot, which feels both true to the comics and also serves as a fairly on-the-nose visual metaphor for Gotham's criminal corruption and political malfeasance. The story's tone also feels unique and confident, trading out the gritty realism of the Nolan trilogy for a more stylized take on the source material that foregrounds the detective aspect of Batman's persona. Don't get me wrong though, this film certainly has more in common with Nolan's interpretation than the camp maximalism of the Schumacher films or the gothic fantasy of the Tim Burton Batman movies, but it's definitely a more exaggerated and over-the-top version of the character, with an intensity that's so powerful it borders on self-parody. They think I'm hiding in the shadows, but I am the shadows. Like, what is this ridiculous fucking nonsense? It sounds like something from a hormonal 15-year-old's live journal, which may be intentional since Pattinson is actively keeping a diary throughout the film. At times, the story does start to feel a little one-note, tonally speaking, but the movie more than makes up for it by punctuating its story beats with some striking shot composition and strong visual variety, and the occasional moment of dry humor to offset the constant air of grim, dark oppression that pervades almost every scene. I really liked Robert Pattinson's performance as the Batman. I know a lot of people are criticizing the movie for not really getting Bruce Wayne right as a character, with Pattinson seeming as gloomy outside the cowl as he does in it, but it felt in keeping with the film's relentlessly angsty narrative. Zoe Kravitz and Colin Farrell also both turned in strong performances, with Colin Farrell being a scene-stealing standout in particular, although he's so unrecognizable under layers and layers of prosthetic makeup that at times I was left wondering why they even cast him in the first place. Like, you could have just hired a character actor who looks like that instead. Like, why didn't they just get John Polito? He's fucking great. Oh, wait, that's right, he's dead. Andy Serkis feels extremely miscast as Bruce Wayne's longtime butler Alfred. His performance isn't necessarily bad per se, it just feels so ill-fitting and out of place that it seems like Andy Serkis may have genuinely wandered into the wrong audition. Paul Dano is also just awful as the Riddler. Every single scene featuring him made me laugh, although thankfully the film keeps him as an unseen antagonist for most of the narrative, which helped to minimize the military-grade cringe on display. However, I did appreciate the way the film's neo-noir influences were more than just skin deep, with several stylistic choices being lifted straight from the hard-boiled detective genre, such as its use of narration and the extensive foot-focused imagery, which which happens so frequently that I wouldn't be surprised if most viewers interpreted the repeated shots of Batman's big black Doc Martens as a simple honeypot for the Quentin Tarantinos in the crowd. While it may seem a little odd, conveying a character's personality from their footwear is actually also a classic hallmark of film noir, so its inclusion in the movie feels very intentional and purposeful, and it reminded me of the highly enjoyable 2005 neo-noir mystery thriller Brick from the director of Knives Out and The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson. The soundtrack felt atmospheric and tonally appropriate, if a tad repetitive at times, although I wouldn't have noticed the lack of variation if the movie didn't go for 3 fucking hours. Although I never felt bored or unengaged during the Batman's 176-minute runtime, it was impossible to come away from the experience without feeling like it was self-indulgent and overlong. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm fine if a movie wants to go past the standard 2-hour length, as long as it can justify itself narratively. One of my favorite films from the last couple of years was the 2018 Argentinian movie La Flor, which is a 15-hour art house epic that took more than a decade to film.
But it took 12 years to make.
Did
La Flor
take 12 years to make?
It took a really long time to make. It took longer than it took them to make the Great Wall of China!
But for most of its runtime, the Batman just feels like a discount Zodiac or Seven, with the Riddler serving as a wimpy, incel version of Jigsaw. Maybe this would have worked better if Pattinson had solved the Riddler's clues in a more engaging way. Most of the time, the answer is just given to him directly in the form of an exposition dump from whatever character he happens to be sharing the scene with. As a result, the film's climax feels a little awkwardly tacked on, as if the studio stepped in to demand a higher body count, regardless of whether it unnecessarily extended the runtime or conflicted with the Riddler's previously established motives. I didn't connect with every aspect of it, and I found some elements to be unintentionally hilarious, but despite all its flaws, The Batman was still a fun and engaging movie that was well shot and well acted, well, for the most part anyway. It's a surprisingly effective piece of blockbuster eye candy, indulging in a sprawling narrative and flashy graphic novel style splash page visuals that occasionally threatens to topple over the edge into outright self-parody. And that's why I'm rating it a 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And why don't you also come hang out at my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/abittershark, where I'm probably streaming live right now. Just look at all the informative content you're missing out on.
Well, this is totally normal. Totally normal. Just a regular drive down the Los Angeles streets. I saw traffic like this a million times when I was driving around LA. It's just normal LA traffic conditions, baby.
And I'll see you all next time.